Hey guys, Teresa here. Welcome back to my channel, Lost My Thread. Today I want to share with you my plans of how I'm going to work through my fabric scraps and reduce them by at least half by the end of May. This video is kind of a follow-on for my goals for Me Made May. So I made a video last week talking about wanting to spend a bit more time getting to know what I want for my wardrobe, working out what my style is, where I would like it to go. If you didn't see that video and you are interested in that topic, I'll put a link to it up here and down in the description box. The other thing that I mentioned as part of my goal is that I really want to try and reduce my fabric scraps. I mentioned this in the So Frugal challenge, but guys, I haven't even scratched the surface. I'm at a point where I currently have 4 of these bins full, and I mean full of fabric scraps. My goal for Me Made May is to try and reduce my fabric bins down to 1 woven and 1 knit, whereas I currently have 2 knit and 2 woven. If I get further, amazing. If I don't meet the goal, at least I will have made some progress towards that. I have a lot of ideas of how I want to use my scraps up, and I'm going to share all of them with you today, including garments, home decor, accessories. I'm really excited to tell you about them. I am somebody who enjoys a bit of color blocking, playing with different fabrics together. This vest that I'm wearing was actually not intended to be color blocked for the original design, but there were these horizontal quilting lines that to me seemed like the perfect opportunity to do some color blocking. So I used all of these fabrics. This is the Murcot Puffer Vest by Cashmerette. I really love how it came out. I've actually done quite a lot of color blocking and mix matching different fabrics together. I'll be popping some images now and as we go along as it's relevant. But the key thing I want to focus on right now is more using fabric scraps. So this was not scraps, but when you can actually do color blocking using your scraps, it is the ultimate in creativity, satisfaction. It's really just like a nice way to feel like you're using what you've got, making the most of what you've got. I have a whole range of projects that I'm excited to work on, but I think what I'll start with is the woven top patterns. The first woven top that I think would work really well for just some general piecing together is the Ashton top by Helen's Closet. Now I have made this top a couple of times before. It's a super simple, very basic boxy shape tank top. And I feel like the simplicity of it is what makes it so perfect for piecing different fabrics together and making that kind of more interesting design element. Now I have found some inspo photos of people who have done this with, I don't know if it's the same top, but it's a very similar top at the very least. And I think it looks really cool and really elevated with this really simple design. And I have some fabric scraps that I've paired together that I think will work really well for this concept. The Ashton top also has a longer version and a cropped version, which means you can really get away with not using very much fabric at all. The idea is that I will be cutting up rectangles of fabric and then piecing those together, finishing them with like an overlocking stitch, probably top stitching them down for extra security and so that they sit flat, which will then create bigger pieces of fabric that I can use to cut out my pattern pieces. The first are these 4 fabrics. So these are either quilting cotton or cotton poplin fabrics. There's a floral design and there's a couple of blues on there. What I was getting when I was looking at these, I really liked these 2 together. So this is a Liberty a Liberty poplin, cotton poplin. I'm holding it upside down because there's like a little foresty scene there. I love the colors with this, and this was giving me like daytime in the forest vibes. And then when I saw these 2 together, these are both quilting cottons, it was making me think like nighttime in the forest. And I really love the idea of using the 2 together. Now, I have no idea until I really cut these things out and try and piece them together. If I could, in theory, do like one on the back and one on the front, I think that could be cool. But even possibly like partway down, creating like a intersection in the middle and having one on one side, one on the other could be really cool. But I like the idea of having an Ashton top using these 4 together somehow. And then again with some quilting cottons, I think this might be a little bit wild, but I think it could also be super, super cool. The fabric that I think I have the biggest piece of is this bright orange, which I love. I feel like the color is not coming up. It's a very like deep, bright red orange. That's probably a bit closer to it. And I feel like it really works well with all these other fabrics. So I got like quilting fabrics, all these quilting cottons with the strawberries. this really bright, it's like a peachy pinky color with a bright orange dot on it, and then this orange one with a nice print on top. I feel like that could be a really fun, like bright, vibrant, summery top. And I think the Ashton top would work well because it is smaller scraps. I think that could be super cute. And then I did want to have something playing with some stripes. I think this one is probably the most unusual combination, but I think it's got potential. I think it's quite cool. So this is a linen with a purple with a white stripe, and this is more of like a red winey almost color. And then this floral is a beautiful cotton tonalon on top of it. I feel like those three could be really cool if I was going to play around particularly with the direction of the stripe. And I also have more of this fabric, which will be familiar to a lot of you guys if you've been watching my recent videos. This is a gorgeous Fabric Godmother viscose lawn fabric, and I have a lot of very small scraps. So I recently made a top out of this fabric. So the bits I have left over are honestly really very small. So what I would really love to do is to actually sew them together, just changing up the direction of these stripes of flowers and just piecing them all together to create some larger pieces of fabric and make a more like scrappy but also really cool and delicate feminine Ashton top. Moving on to the La Brea Tee by Half Moon Atelier. This is one of my favorite top patterns. I've made so many versions of this. I keep going back to it because it's just a big favorite of mine. What I really like about this design is the simplicity. So again, simple design means you have a little bit more room to play with. So this is just one piece of fabric for the front, one piece of fabric for the back. There's a slightly dropped sleeve there, and for the inside you can do just, it's any kind of binding, so you can use the same fabric or a different fabric to do bias binding around the neckline, around the armholes, and then you just fold up the hem. So it is just really simple, minimal pieces, and I feel like you could really use that to create some interesting lines cutting across those. There's no darts on this one. There are darts on the Ashton top, but there's no darts on this one, so I feel like it has really good potential for playing around with different fabrics. Two fabrics that I would love to pair together, and I know they work well because I have a top made out of this and a skirt made out of this, and they do look really good together, but I would like to cut this either in half or in maybe quarters on the top. I feel like that could look really cool, and I have a decent amount of both of these, probably not equal. I have a little bit more of this one. These are both viscose linen fabrics, so they have very much the same kind of weight and drape and handle, and I think that would be such a beautiful elevated top. I also have a bit of an odd scrap of this Nerida Hansen cotton lawn fabric. It's a really fun fabric. It's got these quirky little people on it. There's some little dogs on there. They're doing a variety of fun little activities. I think it is super duper fun, but it's certainly not big enough for me able to make a top from. So one thing I decided to do for all of my Scrappy projects is get a little bit extra fabric in case I don't quite have enough from these, because I have found when I was doing Scrappy sewing before, if you just don't have enough pieces to put it together, you're just going to give up on the project. So I decided to go and order myself a couple of what I feel are neutral colors in my color palette, linen fabrics from the Fabric Godmother. And these are the two fabrics that I decided to go for. So one is like a really lovely rusty orangey red color, and this is like a nice soft brown. It's like a greeny brown color. I feel like both of these would go well with a lot of the fabrics that I have. And if I'm going to be pairing something with this one, I could honestly go for either very happily. I think those colors would go really well together, and so I could do like the top portion of a La Brea top in this fabric and then the bottom in really either of these, and even possibly both, you know, again doing like a vertical line going across. I think that could be super cool. But I got a meter of each of these with the intention of using it partly for this top, but partly for all of my other little scrappy ones if I don't have quite enough. So these two that I just showed you for the La Brea Tee, if I didn't have quite enough, I think this orangey one would complement it really well, so I could add that on. And then my little night and day in the forest vibes, I think would go well with this color. I think that would pair together with any of those. But honestly, even the orange I think would be a really interesting contrast. And this orange really is in both of these floral fabrics as well, so I think that would work really well. I also found a really cool design with a striped color blocked long sleeve t-shirt, and I absolutely want to copy that and do it for myself. And I feel like I actually have a really good combination of jersey scraps So these are all t-shirt fabrics, and I feel like the colors are really pretty close to the inspiration, and they're all different sizes, so I'd have to figure out how wide each of those strips could be. If for some reason I didn't quite have enough of these, I do also have a cotton jersey fabric that I think pairs well that I could use as like a little extra color as needed. This I have a meter of, so it's not technically a scrap, but it could boost up my scraps, and if it helps me get through those, it's worth tucking a little bit into the main fabric. I also found a really cool t-shirt with like a V going down in the center of it. This to me is very similar to the core t-shirt by Closet Core Patterns that I recently made for So Frugal. And funnily enough, I actually have a little bit of the yellow fabric left over, very similar to the top of that top. I don't have a white to pair it with, but actually I think I would really like to try it with this black. So this is a modal jersey, this is bamboo jersey. Again, this is a meter that I have for my normal scraps or for my normal fabric stash, but if I can reduce this down and then have a bit of a black scrap left over, I think I'm still winning with my scrap bin. I have also previously made a couple of the Calypso Color Block Tee by Sinclair Patterns. This is a really fun pattern that basically talks you through, takes your hand and shows you through doing some of this color blocking. You could very much use this inspiration and make it yourself, but if you want to be able to have the pattern pieces on your own, not have to piece these different shapes together, this is a good way to go. I like both of the tees that I've made before, but they are in more of like a cotton jersey structured fabric, and I feel like they're a little bit too big, like the sleeve is a bit oversized for my style. So I might just take this template and use it on another top that I like better. But I have some fabrics that I think would be a really good combination. So this is a gray modal jersey, and this is a navy blue bamboo jersey. Both very similar as far as the weight and the drape. And then I have another petrol blue bamboo jersey that is in my normal fabrics. I think the three of those together could make a really cool and interesting design, and it would be a little bit more drapey, and I feel like it would be super comfortable, super cool, and I really want to play around with that idea. In that same pattern, you also get the Calypso hoodie, so you can piece together more of like a hoodie or a cowl type shape. And I feel like that would be so good for some knit fabric scraps that I have that are more of like a sweater weight. Now, I previously showed these three fabrics for So Frugal that I thought would go well together. This is a brushed viscose jersey, and these are two cotton rib knit fabrics. But I recently made a cardigan and have some left over of this, which is a viscose sweater knit. And I feel like the colors are just, they're too good. Like they're meant to be together. So I feel like I actually now need to use all of these together. And I think making that hoodie pattern with that intentional piece design would be really, really fun. I was also super inspired by a video that What Valerie Makes made recently. If you guys are not familiar with What Valerie Makes, she has a YouTube channel that is super fun. She has such great energy, really fun editing style. She's got a really cool style as well. I 100% recommend her channel if you are not familiar with her already. Get on over there. I'll be putting a link down in the description box. But she made this amazing hoodie for the So Frugal challenge. She was using Anthropologie looks and trying to make them her own. And she made the coolest hoodie with fabric scraps, and I 100% just want to steal her idea and copy it for myself. The idea of this design is to piece together squares of jersey fabrics to create a raglan sleeve, and then she also, I would cut out the main sweatshirting fabric with the same piece and then stitch around the edges, based around the edges to keep them together, and essentially treat that just as your sleeve piece. I think the effect is so, so cool. It looks so cozy and so comfortable. I'd very much want to be going for like an oversized sweatshirt feel. And the hoodie that I was looking at is the Paige hoodie by Chalk and Notch. It is a super classic raglan sleeve hoodie. I would definitely want to size up to get that really kind of slouchy, oversized, cool feel. And I have some scraps. Some of them have been around for really a long old time. These are the fabrics that I've picked out that I think would pair well together for the sleeve. So I've got sweatshirting fabric. I've got even this is a double brushed poly. This is like a velvet fabric. This is a cotton jersey, cotton sweatshirting. I don't think it matters that much how different these fabrics are because they're just going to be laid over the main fabric anyway. And the main fabric is basically going to act like a kind of an interfacing behind it. So it will give it the structure that it needs. I wouldn't bother quilting them. I'm literally just going going to be piecing them together. And the main fabric that I'm going to be using, I thought for me the best color generally is a navy blue. And so I do feel like the navy blue will work really well tying it all together. This navy blue fabric is a fleece back sweatshirting fabric that I got from the Fabric Godmother. They list it as like the thickest, plushest, coziest sweatshirting, and they're not lying. It is super fleecy and thick and spongy and soft, and it just feels wonderful. And I think having an oversized sweatshirt in this would be the coolest thing. I'm a little on the fence about the pocket, the kangaroo pocket at the front. I don't know why. I feel like I probably do need to have it, but it would also look cool without. I'll have to think about, like, look back at what the original design has, which you guys will have seen, so I'll probably end up using it because I think it is in the original. But I think that's going to be such a cool one to put together. I am really excited about it. So that is it with the garments that I have planned, but I also want to make some accessories. I have some bags that I would love to make. I recently made the Coaster Tote by Helen's Closet. It's a free sewing pattern, and I made it using fabric scraps, and I have some more scraps that I think would work really well for it. These are both linen fabric, so this is just 100% linen. They're both 100% linen actually, but this is, I would say, lighter weight, and this is a little bit heavier and stiffer. I feel like the colors are great together. I would use this for like the main part of the bag because it has a little more structure, and then this for the pocket going around the front. As far as the inside, I would have to look through the rest of my scraps. I could possibly piece some things together if I don't have enough, but I feel like that would be such a useful thing to have. I've been loving using my Coaster Tote. It's really handy, and I could definitely do with another. I've also made a couple of bestie bags by BF Patterns recently. I gave one away as a gift, the other one I have for myself, and it is my go-to bag. I use it all the time. What I like about this, I mean, it's definitely a very on-trend, very cool design, but it is surprisingly big. It holds more than you would expect it to, so it is super practical. I recently made a vest using a quilted fabric and unfortunately ended up with a fair amount of scraps left over because every time you sew, nearly every time you sew, you end up with more scraps, and I want to use them. I don't want to just fill up my scrap bins again. And so this really fun fabric, you'll be seeing in my April Makes video, the vest that I made with this, but I actually laid it out and I do have enough of it to make a bestie bag. Now this is actually a double-sided, so I'll have to decide which side I'm going to go with. I used this for the outside of the vest, so I'm kind of tempted to go with this as the outside for the bag, but we'll see what I decide to do. But I think a quilted bag would be so cozy and cute, and I know that I have just enough of this. It won't be a lined bag. I would bind the inside of it to make it nice and neat, but I think it's a winner. I also think a pieced together bestie bag would be super cool as well. So similar to the techniques I was talking about with the tops, but using these fabrics. So this is a cotton canvas, a really nice structured fabric. This is a cotton twill fabric, and this is another cotton canvas, but a little bit more lightweight. I think the colors are great together. They're very much the kinds of colors that I wear. I have made a bag with this fabric before, and I absolutely love that bag as well. And I feel like these three pieced together in a kind of a patchwork fashion would be really fun, and I could get a little creative with where I decide to put all these little plant peeps, little faces popping up on the bag. For the Sew Frugal challenge, I made this really cool pieced corduroy jacket. This is the Peppermint West End jacket. You can get it for free, or you can pay if you prefer to pay, which I think I did when I bought this. But this is such a great jacket pattern as a really basic design. Like I said, using these kind of basic things and then creating your own seam lines, I think are really effective. It was a really great jacket. I love how it turned out, but I actually still have some scraps. I'm not talking big scraps. I'm talking like little strips and little squares of corduroy fabrics, but I think I could take a lot of these small scraps and make some really cool zipper pouches with them. So I would really like to do some patchwork rectangles, bringing them together and making a variety of size of different zipper pouches. I especially like a boxy zipper pouch. I think it looks really cool, but it's also really practical, and I think that would be such a great use for these corduroy scraps. The one project that I'm probably the most excited to get done and finished up and in my life are some wall hangings. Now this is something that I put on my 24 for 2024 goal, so something I really want to do this year. I have loads of fabrics that I think go really well together that could create a really cool and interesting design to hang on the wall. One place I want to hang it is right up here in this blank space that you see behind me, but I also have some space above my sofa in the living room that's just like a blank space, could definitely use a little bit of color to liven it up. Now, I would really love the idea of making 2 wall hangings that I could then potentially swap back and forth just to change the look and change the vibe. We'll see how that goes. I have a couple of ideas of wall hangings that I want to create. The first design I would say is quite like Bauhaus inspired. I like Bauhaus art, different geometric shapes overlapping, bold colors. I think the fabrics I have are definitely a bit more muted and the colors aren't quite the same, but I think the style and the shapes is definitely the kind of vibe I would like to go for. So I'm thinking circles, I'm thinking squares or rectangles. You can do designs where it's all very symmetrical left to right or top to bottom, and I think that looks really cool, but I think I actually prefer when it looks a little bit more irregular, a little bit more impulsive, loose, creative, and that is what I think I want to do. I'm not planning to quilt these. I don't want to have something that looks quite stiff and heavy and structured on the wall. I like the idea of it being fabric that is still quite fluid and drapey. Maybe it will move when you walk past it. There are these really beautiful traditional Korean wall hangings that really struck me and were very much the kind of vibe that I was envisioning. I will say these tend to be made with silks. They're often used for curtains as well. They are truly stunning, and I will say my fabrics are not as drapey. They're not going to be quite so incredibly fluid and beautiful looking, but that's the kind of idea of the style that I'm going for. I am planning to make some videos when I make these different wall hangings so you can understand a little bit more about the technique. But for this geometric design, I wanted some fairly plain fabrics. I generally wanted to go for solids, and the fabrics that I've picked out are these. So I feel like all of these colors go really well together. Now I appreciate this is a stripe, not a solid, but I felt like the colors were just too good. And if you can imagine these colors, I mean, it's obviously, a lot of them are literally scraps from the vest that I made, so it's very much my vibe, these colors. But if you imagine these being different geometric shapes overlapping, as far as the background, I'm not going to know until I lay all this out to be able to tell what's going to be kind of the base color. But I do have a scrap left over of some fabric that I've recently made into a couple of garments. This is a viscose linen fabric, and I feel like the color is definitely a really good pairing. It's slightly different from the pink that I have on here, but I think it is similar enough that it will just look like an interesting accent. But something I was thinking with all the geometric shapes, I love the idea of having some overlapping corners. So maybe overlapping circle over a square or 2 rectangles overlapping, and then having the fabrics in the middle that look like the overlap, if that makes sense. So if you imagine I have like this blue square, and then next to it is going to be this, whoops, yellow square. The section that overlaps their corners, I would use this green. So then you'd have a transition from each of those in the corner. And I can similarly do that with my pink, overlapping the yellow, with this orange in between for the corner. So I think it's going to be a really fun and interesting one to put together. I am dying to have a little bit of color on this wall behind me, but also I just feel like it will be such an interesting creative process. The other wall hanging I want to make is much more of a like free-flowing improv quilt style. I've seen some really cool designs using triangles, and that is what I want to do. I really love when you can put 2 triangles together to create a bigger triangle. There's just something that I really enjoy about seeing all those angles coming together. And so I want to piece together different triangles to eventually get larger and then piece multiple together using much more wild fabric. So not the plain, simple colors, but I have this variety of very colorful scraps that I think would be so fun to use together. Now, I know I'm not going to be able to show you guys all these together visually very easily. I want it to be loud. I want these things to contrast, but also work well together in a cohesive way. So I'm going to be piecing one piece at a time and then seeing which one I think would go well with it. I think it's going to be a really interesting, fun, creative process, and I think it's going to create something super cool to hang on my wall, and I really do want to share that journey with you when I start playing around with these scraps. With all the projects that I've shared with you guys, if I were to work through all of those scrap busting projects, this is all that I would have left as my jersey scraps and my woven scraps. Now, I am very aware that as I try and make these different projects, I will come out with some other scraps. When I make more projects, they're going to be filling these bins, and I don't think I'm realistically going to do all of these things in the month of May. But I at least feel like I have an idea, I have a vision to use up the vast majority of my fabric scraps. And if I can manage to work through those projects, I am confident that my scrap bins will be looking much lighter and much better. I would also love to hear your favorite scrap busting projects or ideas, patterns that you tend to use. If there's anything that I mentioned that you're especially excited to see sewn up in the month of May, let me know and I can try and prioritize it. I feel like one way or another, I'm going to be making some progress, so I'm going to be feeling closer to my goal by the end of the month. I really hope that this has inspired you to look at your scraps a bit differently, maybe pull some of those out and see what you can maybe piece together. It's fine to use other fabrics as well if you feel like on the whole you're still reducing those fabric scraps down. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you give me a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to my channel if you want to see all these things made up and if you want to see other videos from me in the future. I'll see you guys very soon. Bye!